Hi guys. So I'm a little bitter because I just spent 9 minutes making a video. Well, I spent 7.5 minutes making a video, and then YouTube lost connection. I was gonna do a direct upload from YouTube, but apparently that wasn't gonna work. So now I'm gonna do it on my webcam and then upload the file. Okay. And it was super awesome. Like I was making my tea in front of you, and you could see like how the TARDIS disappears on this side and appears on this side, and it was super awesome. And I lost it because I don't know why, because my computer sucks. My computer's annoying me. I spent 40 minutes yesterday trying to get it to be able to go on the internet for something that was completely stupid. But today I'm going to tell you guys about my trip to Ghana because I haven't really done that yet. But first, I have 3 things to tell you about. One, I have an A100. I have an accounting final tomorrow at 6 o'clock at night, which kind of sucks because it's a Saturday. Sorry, a Sunday. But it's an 8-week class, which means that after my final tomorrow, I don't have to go to it for the rest of the semester. Which means that my first class on Monday, Wednesday will be at 8:30 at night, which is lovely. Except I'll be super lazy. And the week after next week, 2 weeks from now, I start my India class. So that's gonna be fun because my friend Emily's in it, and we get to learn about India stuff. And I get to fill out another visa form. I also got Emma's Christmas present. I got yarn, super lovely yarn, and she also made me homemade cookies, which I'm super excited about. I've already eaten quite a few of them. And I'm probably going to end up making a sweater out of the yarn because it's a lot of yarn. But sweaters take months to make, so my goal is to have it done by this coming Christmas. So yeah, that's going to take a while. And also, did you know that you can sign up to be you can apply to be a beta tester for the new Google Glasses? Like, I seriously want to do this because I think it's like, if you get it, you still have to pay like $1,200 for the glasses. But, I mean, first off, the odds of getting it are very, very slim. But I also just think it's totally worth it because these are like one of the biggest technological advances of all time. Like, basically all science fiction has been talking about when this, like, has been projecting that this was going to happen, and Google's just the first people to do it because Google is freaking awesome, man. Okay. I went to Ghana. I left the country on December 28th. Drove to Bloomington, drove to Indy, flew to Minneapolis, which Minneapolis has like the coolest airport of all time. The terminal we were at had an iPad at every single seat. So you would just sit there and like play solitaire while you were waiting for your plane to leave, and it was really cool. And you could order food on the iPad. It was awesome. And then we flew to Amsterdam, which everything at the Amsterdam airport was really expensive, and they had these very strange specialty dishes at McDonald's, and we were very wary of them because it's like, we don't know what Swedish dishes of McDonald's are like. And then we flew to Accra. We got to Accra at like 8:30, 9:30 at night. And the last time I had been outside, it had been in Indianapolis, where it was 30 degrees and snowing. And then Accra was 85 degrees with about 60% humidity, and I'd been traveling for 24 hours straight. So I felt pretty disgusting. We all did. And then we had to stand in line at customs, which was about 85 degrees because they don't really have air conditioning there, for about 2 hours. So that kind of sucked. And then we got met by some people that work at Challenging Heights, and they drove us to the house in Winneba, and then we all went to bed. And we hadn't seen the kids yet because they go to bed super early because they get up at like 5 o'clock in the morning. 5 o'clock in the morning. My throat hurts and I'm sick, so I'm drinking a lot of tea. So the next morning we woke up. We could hear the kids running around because the kids, like, the first thing they do when they wake up is they take a shower. So we were right next to the showers, and we could hear them. Like, the girls' room was right next to the showers. We had a girls' room and a boys' room. So we got up, we got dressed, we went out, and the kids were very wary of us because I'm assuming they knew we were coming, but they hadn't seen us yet, and they didn't really know what we were going to be like. So they were kind of like, I have pictures of the compound, but the place. Compound has a bad sound to it. But the place where the Hopti house, I have pictures of it online. It's like a U-shaped double balcony thing, and then in the middle was like this concrete courtyard where the kids would run around. And that morning they had like plastic bags that they'd made into a little ball by tying a lot of string around it. And they were running around playing with that, playing soccer, using their flip-flops as goals. Those flip-flops the kids have, they take a beating, man. Like, they fix them with it. I mean, those flip-flops have a longer life than is possible. So we ate breakfast, and the kids, like, were not talking at all during breakfast. It was, like, this really sweet, like, rice porridge. Then we also got bread, which kind of tasted like Hawaiian bread because it was really sweet. And then after that, we had church. And we had church in the same place where we ate breakfast. And their church was about 2 hours long. And it took until about, I'd say 20 minutes into church for the kids to warm up to us. The church was basically like they had a PowerPoint presentation about the trials of Jesus, like the 40 days where he was in the desert and he was fasting, and temptations of the devil and all that kind of stuff. And then they also did a lot of singing. And while this was going on, the kids, we were sitting amongst them. And, like, they would sit there, and one of the girls had black fingernail polish on. And they were just kind of, like, touching it. And it wouldn't come off, and they were just so confused by that. And then they were also, like, pressing on our skin. Because you know how your skin changes color when you press on it. It goes from pink to white, and then it goes back really quick. Their skin doesn't do that. So they were really confused by that. And they just sit there and, like, poke you, watching your skin change colors. And they were so fascinated by that. And played a lot of double dutch, like double this, double that during church. And they just, like, they were asking your names, and they were, like, sitting on your lap and holding your hands. It was, like, the warmest reception of all time. Like, I don't like being touched. I don't really like physical contact. I kind of just enjoy my personal space. But these kids were so cute, and I have pictures on Facebook of how you would have a kid hanging on your back, a kid on each arm, and a kid on your legs. Like, because these kids, I mean, they have adults at the house, but they have to be professional, and they have to, like, the kids have to respect them and see them as an authority figure, so they don't really give them much. I mean, they give them one-on-one attention, but it's not on the same level that we could, which is part of the reason we were there, is just to give these kids some love and some attention and some human interaction. And that was probably the most beneficial thing of our time there. It's like they have like 53 kids there. Basically what happens is these kids, they get sold into slavery by their parents. Their parents think they're selling them to go learn a trade, like an apprenticeship, for 2 years. And these people pay them 200 cedi, which is about $100 for their kid for 2 years. And then they're actually selling their kid into slavery, and they don't realize that. And they get sold. They go to this fishing. They go to this fishing place called Lake Volta, and it's very dangerous work. They're not going to school. They're working like from sunup to sundown in very dangerous conditions, getting abused, all this kind of stuff, all this really horrible stuff. And the guy who started the organization, his name is James Kofi Annan, and he was a child slave. He escaped, taught himself how to read, went to school, became manager of a really important bank in Ghana, and he started this organization. And what this organization does is they go into like villages, and they tell people like about what is going on. They tell people about the slavery, all this kind of stuff, and they start to gather a list of all the kids who are missing from that village. They take that list to the police, and then they take it to the chief of the Lake Volta area, and the Lake Volta chief makes the people who own these kids basically give them to Challenging Heights. And then Challenging Heights takes them to the place we were staying, the Havdi House. And they have to be there between minimum of 3 months, maximum of 6, with a possible extension up to a year if there are like problems. And they basically, they teach them, they have teachers there, and they just like try to teach them. It's not really, like, they're trying to teach them like how to read, all that kind of stuff, like stuff that you should, like, being from America, you learn when you're like 5 or 6. Like, you learn your letters, you learn your numbers, all this kind of stuff. And there were like kids who were like should have been like in middle school or high school who didn't know this kind of stuff because they didn't get a chance to go to school. And it's really hard because the main language there is Twi. These kids can't read Twi, and they can't speak English, and everything is in English. So they're just like, it's so hard for them because they're in a country which they can't read their own language. They can't speak the language that everything is in. So you just kind of, you feel it's so hard. And so they have these kids in school, and they are trying to teach them, but they're also trying to just get them to be able to sit still for like 45 minutes for a class, which, I mean, these kids have been working for like God knows how long. So that's really hard for them. And like trying to get, like, we sat in on some of the classes, and trying to get these kids to sit still was so hard. And it was crazy. But they played a lot of soccer. They play a lot of soccer. These kids are really good. They're all in like seriously incredible shape because they play outside all day long. And also, I mean, they give them a lot of food at the Havdi house. It is like you have to clean your plate, which was really entertaining actually, because like some of the kids didn't like some of the meals that they were given. So they like had this very like decided on system where they would know who liked the dishes and who didn't. So like if you had a dish that you didn't like, you knew the person who did like that dish and you would go give them your food. And there was just a lot of trading around. And after the first meal, they started like talking more and like doing that more because they got more comfortable with us being there. But there were a couple of things that we didn't like this really horrible, disgusting, bitter, salty, sour, every unpleasant taste you can possibly have was in this dish. And we tried so hard to eat it. One guy managed to eat all of it, and it was like the biggest accomplishment of the entire trip. But we figured out who did like it out of the kids, and we just were like, hey, you want this? You want this? And my phone. Sorry, it's the TARDIS. So it was really entertaining. One of the guys, I can't remember which one. It's gonna bother me now. But he ended up eating like 4 of our plates because we couldn't do it. And then one of the little boys, Beidou, we called him Mario because he always wore a Mario shirt, which he was really confused by because we were like, hey Mario, and he just kept walking because he didn't know that we were calling him Mario. But he was like 9 or 10 years old, and he had the biggest personality. Like, he had swag. Very few 9 or 10-year-olds have swag. This kid had swag. And there was one time I was like, hey Beidou. It was a really disgusting like breakfast porridge thing, every bad taste under the sun dish. I was like, hey Beidou, do you want this? And he looks at me, looks at the dish, looks at me, looks at the dish, and he's like, and I'm just like, you shouldn't have that much swagger. You're like 9 years old. But he was really cute. The kids were all really adorable. There were like 5 quos. The smallest boy, Jacob, he was 7. I mean, he looked like he was 4. And he had the strangest shaped head. It was really funny. Like, you know the drink dispensers in the first Toy Story movie, like the alien ones at the Pizza place? That's what his head was shaped like. And it was so cute. It was really funny because he was kind of a little butt because he was the youngest one there, and he was very clearly the baby. He was used to being treated like a baby. And, like, no one liked playing with him because, like, he would just, like, take the ball and run away because he thought it was funny. And they would just get really frustrated by him. But, like, with, like, 2 or 3 days left to go on the trip, this is gonna be such a long video, guys. I'm sorry. With, like, 2 or 3 days left to go on the trip, this guy, Nolan, he got one of the guys on our trip, Jacob got so attached to him. And, like, from that point on, you did not see them apart because Jacob was Nolan would always have to carry Jacob. Like, Jacob would not take it any other way. He had to be carried by Nolan, and it was the funniest of all time because it was just, like, the strangest pairing. And then there were 2 kids who spoke English there. They were, like, fluent in English. Muhammad and Adam. And Adam drew us all pictures before we left. I have it, like, pinned right there. And he was a really good artist. And, like, we weren't supposed to have favorites, but in all honesty, they were a couple of our favorites because we could actually talk to them. And that's kind of a big part of how well you know someone. And they were, like, whenever we would play soccer with the kids, like, they were in way better shape than we were, so we'd be, like, puffing, and, like, after, like, 10 minutes, we'd just be walking. Like, we weren't running anymore. There was no effort left. And we would just be, like, making jokes at each other, and we would sometimes forget that Adam and Muhammad could actually understand us, and they would start laughing at how ridiculous we were. And one time, it was, like, the first or the second day, and Nolan, who's only 5'5", no, he's only 5'3", he was playing catch with Adam and Muhammad, And this was like before we really understood that they could speak English fluently. And one of the girls on our trip was like joking, just, "Hey, don't throw it too high for him. He's only 5'3". And Muhammad got this face whenever he was being a little shit. He knew when he was being a little shit, and he got that face, the I'm being a little shit face, and started throwing it over Nolan's head. I'm just like, oh goodness. But they left like the week after we left. They went back. When you leave, you go back to your family, and the organization gives grants to these people's family, mostly the moms, so they can like expand their business. So basically, just so these kids don't get sold back into slavery. And they have like all these checks. Like they have someone go and check on the kid once a week for the first like 6 months. But Adam and Muhammad are from Liberia, so they can't really go back to their own country. So they're like staying with a lady in the capital of Accra. And then also when we were there, we went to the Canopy Walk, and that was really cool. It's the longest canopy walk in the world. And we went to a slave castle, which Barack Obama has been to. And when this was like that day, that was our like day away from the kids, and one of the house moms went with us because we basically would have died because very few people there. Like, even though all of the signs are in English, everything is in English. Not very many people seem to speak English, which is kind of weird. So we would have it would have been a bad situation if we would have gone by ourselves. No one would have, we never really felt in danger, but it just, we wouldn't have probably ended up in the right places. And that was like the second or third day before we left. And whenever we got back that night, we got the warmest reception you can possibly imagine. Like, we were so attached to the kids at that point. And like we came back in, and the kids had thought we'd left without saying goodbye. So we came back, and you just had like 20 kids running at you and jumping on you and jumping into your arms and hugging you and all this kind of stuff. And it was so sweet. It was so cute. Oh my god, I miss them. And leaving was like the hardest thing you can possibly imagine. Before I talk about leaving, we had New Year's there. And New Year's was really kind of horrible because we were in this room for 3 hours listening to them sing. And they had windows open, but it was still like 100 degrees in there with like 95% humidity. And that sucked. And the showers were kind of interesting. Don't really know what else to say about that. I'm trying to get this under 20 minutes. Let's see. There's something else I want to talk about. Oh yeah, this isn't going to be under 20 minutes. I'm sorry, this is like the longest video in existence. We went to a New Year's festival in the area we were in, Winneba. And the guy who was like in charge of the organization was there, James Coffey. And they had like a lot of people in like really elaborate costumes, all this kind of stuff, which I have pictures of on Facebook. And we got there at like 9 o'clock in the morning. It was ridiculous. We got there so early. Our bus actually broke down on the way there, and we had to get like 20 cabs to get all the kids there. And they weren't even done setting up when we got there. The whole thing didn't start till like 1 o'clock. So we sat there for 4 hours. These kids aren't very good at sitting still for a class, but for some reason they were able to sit there for 4 hours without moving. Like, I was getting so antsy, and these kids, like, most of them are like 9 years old. 9-year-olds usually aren't able to sit still for 4 hours. These kids just sat there for 4 hours, not really saying anything. They gave us lunch, all that kind of stuff. And it was just incredible. Like, I realized that, like, halfway through, I was like, these kids, like, aren't complaining, they aren't screaming, they aren't fighting. They're just sitting here. And it was incredible. It was completely incredible. And then, like, the reason we got there so early was because this was a really big event. So, like, I'd say at least 10,000 people were there. And people, like, we started out, we had plenty of room. Like, as people started getting there, we kept getting more and more squished to the point that you were, like, the arms of your chair were, like, overlapped with the person in the chair, with the chair of the person next to you. And we just kept getting more and more squished together. And, like, anytime a kid would get up and go to the bathroom, people would come in and try to take that kid's seat. And it was probably that was probably the most uncomfortable. That was one of the scariest parts of the whole trip, just because people were yelling and screaming a lot. And the bathrooms there were a fence, so I didn't go to the bathroom there. And then don't think there's anything else to tell you guys about except leaving. And we left on the 5th or something like that. We left at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And the kids knew that we were leaving. There was this one little boy, Francis, who was literally the sweetest little boy I've ever met. He was so adorable. He was so sweet. We taught him the IU fight song, and he was so proud of himself. He would do the IU thing, and he was so proud of himself. I wish I would have gotten a video of him doing the IU fight song. I really regret that. But he was like coming up to me and this girl Kelly, and he was like, "You come back in 3 weeks. You come back in 3 weeks." And we were like, "We can't do that. We can't come back in 3 weeks." And leaving was definitely the saddest part of the whole trip, because if I went back now, the kids still wouldn't all be there. Like, Muhammad and Adam left the week after we did. These kids are only there for 3 or 6 months, for like between 3 and 6 months. Like, I want to go back, I really want to, but I know that when I go back, the kids I met and the kids that like I fell in love with aren't gonna be there. And we can't like get in contact with them. We can't find them on Facebook. We're not allowed to as part of the contract we signed, because they don't want people to be making promises that they can't keep, or like showing favoritism or all that kind of stuff. And I can't accurately put into words how it feels to leave behind 50 little kids that you've like fallen in love with over the past week, knowing that you're never going to see them again. I can't describe it. Everyone in our group was crying. Like, it was so extremely hard. So that would be a sad note to leave you on. So I got an elephant bracelet while I was there, and I got a scarf, and I got a blanket from my dad, and I got one of my brothers a wallet, and I got my other brother a bunch of carved elephants, and I got my mom and my aunt bowls. It kind of seems cheap after talking about leaving, but that was my video. 23 minutes. I could honestly talk about it for like multiple days, so I think 23 minutes is pretty good. Feel free to watch or not watch the whole thing. Feel free to watch in multiple segments. Probably should have said that at the beginning. But that's my video. Bye, guys.